All right. Good. We're still in the morning, right? Good morning-ish. Good afternoon-ish. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that your breakout sessions really provided both insight and fresh energy around our work together. It's now time to turn our attention to a really vital topic, which is what it means to live and thrive with CMT. So this next discussion is a 45-minute panel discussion on owning your story, how and why to share your journey with CMT. So basically living CMT out loud. So I have a panel here of CMT experts, and we're going to get started with introductions. So let's just go down the row. And if you want to let the audience know who you are, what you do, and if your comfortability of your type of CMT.
Oh, check one. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name's Alex Ferrara. I work for Bank of America, corporate America, in Florida, and I was officially diagnosed with CMT DRP2, CMT2, at the beginning of the year, even though I had the symptoms for close to 5 to 7 years. Just never chose to follow up until it progressed to a point where I was like, I need to do something. Excited to be here, share my story. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie Carmody from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I am CMT 2C with a TRPV4 mutation. It affects my vocal cords, so my voice is very quiet, but I hope you can hear me. I serve as a liaison between the 2C community and the expert researchers working to understand our disorder and find a treatment. So, very glad to be here today, see you all, and hopefully share my story to give some insight into living with my rare, severe type. So,
Thank you, Stephanie.
Morning, everyone. My name is Paula Hamilton, live in Atlanta, Georgia, where I work as a communication coach and instructor. I'm also a licensed speech language pathologist. I was diagnosed 20 years ago with CMT1A, although I know that I was living with it my whole life. I finally got an official diagnosis in my 30s, and just so happy to be here and finally speaking out loud about my story.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Wolfgang. I am a patient with axonal CMT, but my subtype is actually not quite known yet. I also happen to be a scientist. I run a lab at Columbia University. And so like Rob, I'm a patient scientist, right? And I'm excited to now be here primarily in my role as a patient, though, to talk about my experience and, share with you and learn from you.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Rob Pryor. I'm a CMT researcher. I've spent my whole academic career, which is actually quite short, 10 years, working on CMT. I was diagnosed at 13 or between 13 and 15 with CMT X-linked type 1. I think my family was initially misdiagnosed with CMT type 1A. But yeah, since then, I've really just wanted to dedicate my life to CMT research and try to move the needle in the field.
Welcome, right? Paula, I want to start with you. You're a communications coach. Why do you think it's important for patients to share their journey with their personal and professional network?
Well, firstly, for me in particular, being a Black woman, it's important that I bring visibility to the Black community, that this is something that Black people do have. Many of us have been told maybe we don't. And I became very aware as my symptoms started to impact my hands. There was no hiding it. and I wanted people to know what I have. Many people will look at me and assume, oh, she must have some type of arthritis or challenge like that. So the fact that I can say it out loud and that people are becoming aware that there's something out in the world called CMT, it's just a privilege for me to be able to have a position where I can bring some visibility to it.
Awesome. Anyone else on the panel want to answer that too?
I'll share. I mean, I have a story professionally that strikes me, and I can share a little bit personally, but I have a client who's in his 70s, and he his work, he stands up all day, and he had mentioned to me several times it gets painful being standing up all the time, and the more he shared his struggles and so forth, the more I just said, you know, I have this condition called CMT, and I just showed him my braces and explained a little bit more and more. And to be honest, he was someone who probably would never go to the doctor and so forth. And while he didn't have CMT, it's more neuropathy, I think, based on, and I'm no physician, but he had diabetes and so forth. But the good news, which was fulfilling for me, was he ended up getting braces just like mine for his thing. So from a professional standpoint, there are some positivity. Of course, there are struggles personally, but even at work, you almost are obliged to share your story just because they might think that you're limping or walking a little bit differently, at least in my case. And so, I mean, I just let everybody know this is just me personally. You know, I have a condition, and it's helpful to share that. But along with that comes, of course, the struggles.
Yeah, I think it's very important to share your story because CMT can be not only physically destroying, but really emotionally destroying. And a way to remove that emotional chains it has on you is to kind of share your story, own your story. And in terms of your community, like you sharing your story, you're shining a light on your difficulties, and other people will relate to that. And so, you know, when you share your story, they'll share their story, and then all of a sudden the room becomes a bit brighter with people sharing their story. And in terms of research agenda, this might sound odd, but sometimes like we really need an emotional anchor in our lives to say, okay, I'm dedicating my life to this. I'm dedicating my life to this person. And for me, even though I've CMT, like I don't do anything for myself. It's only for the people I love. And I think that's why a lot of us in this room, you'll do whatever you can for like the people in your family, but not per se yourself. So you're always dedicating yourself to someone. And so I think in a line in research agendas, it's very important sharing your story.
And maybe I'll just add to that a little more on a higher level. I think sharing the story also can dispel that weirdness. You know, if people see me walking a little weird and they don't know what it is, it's like, oh, he's a bit weird, right? They'll talk. It's like, what's up with that guy? It's a bit weird. Maybe. And then going up to them and saying, look, you know, actually, you may have noticed I walk a little weird. And you know what it is about? It's CMT. You may, want to learn about it. It's actually a really interesting disease. It's a fascinating life in some way. And that, I think, can really help at least I'll speak for myself, in my life, talking to people and saying, you know what, I have these weak legs, or I have this thing called CMT. That dispels he's a bit weird. thing. And that alone, it's a little intangible, but I think that alone is a huge benefit of just being proactive and saying, look, this is who I am. I'm a lot of things that are not CMT, but I also have this thing that, well, means my legs are a little weak and maybe I walk a little funny and maybe I can't go on the hike with you as much as I would like. That really helps your social circle to understand who you are too. And at least for me, I found that there's a lot coming back positively from that. Maybe we'll speak later. I don't know if anybody has kids, but I think for kids in particular, right? Kids can be very judgy. I mean,
Mean.
it's rough. It can be rough, very mean. And if you're in class and you can't run that fast, well, you're just the slow guy or the slow girl. And as Susan said earlier, you don't get picked in teams. But if you have something to explain it, look, I have this thing. It's not, I'm weird, but there's a name for it. And it's not a bad thing. I think that can be super productive. So I'll just add that.
Just kind of comment on that. I think that's super important for removing the element of victimhood. Like you own the disease, don't let the disease own you. And I think the earlier someone can learn that, it's like they get on with life. Like, F it, it's fine. Get on, pick yourself up physically and emotionally and just get on with it. It's a good mentality.
Excellent. Just out of curiosity for the patients in the room, if you don't mind a show of hands, how many of you have a variant of unspecified significance, a VUS? Got a hand in the back of me? Wolfgang, you're a geneticist. You work on CMT, you have a lab, and you still don't know what is driving your CMT. How do you talk about that to your colleagues and your friends?
So that one's a tricky one. Because, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So I am a geneticist, or I work with genetics. I've obviously taken my own family. We're 4 affected in the family. My father is the first one. As sort of a case study of, how far can we actually get with these genetics? Everybody talks about genome sequencing and exome sequencing, and maybe you do a microarray, and maybe now we do long read sequencing. How far can we get? And unfortunately, the answer to that is that, especially for axonal types, there's a good chance that even if we do all the sequencing we know of and do it the best way possible, we still won't know a definitive answer. And it turns out that I'm in that boat of group, which actually isn't that small. But of course, what Laura is asking me too is how do I explain that, as a supposedly somewhat, smart scientist that is specialized in this stuff, I still haven't figured out my own thing. So what hope is there for anybody else? I mean, okay.
That's not what I asked, but
but that is the elephant in the room, right? And I want to make clear that the fact that we haven't figured out my own disease, or rather the genetic cause of it, does not mean that the whole thing is hopeless. Very much the opposite. I think through my experience in, going through the various different stages of sequencing and collaborating with many of the leading scientists, later you'll hear from Stefan Zuckner, who will explain to you another way of why it's important to get genetic testing. There's a lot of hope for those that have not found their genetic cause yet, or that may be looking at a variant of unknown significance, as in you found a variant, there's something different, but we don't quite know what it means. The technology is rapidly advancing. And one of the best things, I think, from a sort of scientific plus patient perspective, is that maybe the key to solving these cases is actually work together. Because, and I think I've said, sorry for taking a little bit of time, but this is important. Science in the end typically boils down to comparing groups. It's like you have some healthy people over here, and you have a few people with a disease over there, and then you look for the common thing that all the patients with the disease have in common and that none of the controls have. That's science, basically. But that doesn't work so well if you have very small groups, right? If you only have a few patients, then it's hard to see the common denominator, the commonality, because we're all so different anyways, right? We all have CMT, but we're quite different, right? So what's the thing that we all have in common? A mutation that causes CMT. The good thing is that by getting together and getting more sequences done, you may help not only yourself, but solve other patients' questions, right? If, for example, somebody here in the room may have an unknown cause of disease of CMT, maybe they happen to have the same cause as I, right? Maybe. And if we put those two together, then we'll see the pattern. So getting sequenced, even if it doesn't immediately solve your own disease, can help others. As much as we can increase that group, that's the way forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Stephanie, you've had this experience your whole life, right? And so, like some other people on the panel, it's later in life, suddenly things are shifting, and now I have to figure out what it is so I can explain it to people around me. So, you've been telling your story all along. Can you remember a moment where you've encountered another CMT patient, maybe even a 2C patient, where you've really been able to connect with that person and made a difference for them and what that means? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been so proud to be able to share my story. It's allowed me to connect with so many people within the 2C community. Before my genetic diagnosis in 2014, we didn't know what was going on with my body. And such severe, unusual symptoms. I grew up in the neuromuscular community. I knew thousands of people with neuromuscular disorders, but nobody looked like me. Nobody shared my exact symptoms. And it was a very lonely place to be. We called my disorder Steffi disorder growing up. We just didn't know. It's been such a pleasure to find so many other people diagnosed with my rare type through the social media group on Facebook that I founded 10 years ago. We went from 2 members to 243 as of today. We've learned from each other. We've helped the researchers learn what our symptoms are. They did realize some of our symptoms, or we now work with David Goldstein and his team at Actio Biosciences. We've got a naturalistic study called Registry at Actio. It's about to start phase 1B, got their drug inhibitor trial. So just stepping out and sharing my story has allowed me to connect with so many people. I have hundreds of new friends. It's been a phenomenal experience.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. For Alex and Paula, maybe there was a moment in your life where you shared this for the first time. Alex, more recently. Can you remember who that was and what that experience was like? Maybe one.
Yeah, I mean, I just probably 2 years, a year and a half ago, I moved to a new community, was meeting a lot of people, and started taking on pickleball. Used to play tennis a lot, but it seemed like all the cooler people were playing pickleball. And I started playing, and I just noticed after, several hits, I started sweating a lot more. I noticed accidentally stumbling, but I always caught myself. There were just so many different little things, but the real thing that made me get to the next level, even though I probably had the symptoms 5 years ago at such a minor level, was just sweating profusively with minimal effort. And so and then, going to talk to people, standing up, having a drink in the hand, so many times, if I'm having a drink, standing, these are the few things that got me to think I really need to take that next step. So I'm standing up, talking, having a drink, and all I can think about is don't fall. And I'm moving my feet right and left so I'm not stable. And it reached a point where I'm like, to my colleague, I'm like, listen, I'm not drunk. I'm just, I have this condition called CMT. And so the same goes for when I was playing pickleball, stumbling. I think it was even noticeable that I sweat more than other people. I just said I had to say, this is a condition I have. Now I go a little bit more in depth now that it's been officially diagnosed, and I will continue taking it to the next level because I think there's so many people for 5, 6 years might have had it, maybe longer, and haven't really talked about it until it reaches a point. And so the more we talk about it, the more we're going to find more people. And I think the more sample size will allow us to hopefully find a cure.
Well, I will say for me, the most important people that I shared this with was my family. I do not have a family history. So although, again, we all realized I was different because I was the clumsiest, the least athletic in the family, that there was something. So being able to finally get a diagnosis and have that conversation with my family was a huge relief for me, but it was also a huge relief for my family because they finally were able to understand my challenges. And I'm very hopeful that just in having that diagnosis within my family now, it opens the door for future generations because now they will know that if there's something like this, that they start to see symptoms, somebody can say, oh, we had a family member who was diagnosed. And now with, again, one of my symptoms being my hands being much more visible, I am being much more vocal and assertive and just sharing it with people, even if they don't ask. Very much like you, just to kind of dispel that. And people will know, okay, this is what's going on with Paula, so that I can get that support from them and they can have that awareness.
Excellent. Anyone else want to chime in?
First time you shared?
Do you remember?
No, I don't. Yeah, for me, it was very difficult. I would hide it for as long as possible, and I would adapt everything to hide it as much as possible. And I remember, like, it's like a lump in your heart when you feel like, "Ugh, I need to tell this person, I need to open up," and it was very difficult. And uh, I think it was never like an on and off switch about opening up. It's more of a gradient and it's more of like small steps. But God, I can't remember the first time. But I remember the first time telling my friends that was very difficult. They were like, they always knew me as clumsy, and I still played sports, still done boxing. Like probably not the best sport for a CMT patient. And then the rest of my family members were rugby players, and I was like, I don't think I'll do that. But yeah, I think opening up to them, and I knew with my family it was okay, but with what they had it, so they better be okay. But with my friends, it was a bit different. They just were more accepting than I thought, and yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask another question. We're going to keep it going, but we are going to give an opportunity for anyone in the audience to ask these guys a question. So if you're thinking about something and want to ask a question, just put your hand up and Anna will bring you a mic. Rob, well, for anybody who actually wants to answer, we'll start the researchers on the end. It's a little unique because you understand what it's like to be in a body of a CMT patient, and then you're researchers and you study it. But how important is storytelling to the research community?
I think it's very important. And how you communicate it. You have to tailor the message as well a bit. You're trying to think about what would this person understand best as well. So for me, my friends, that for whatever reason, they're all like electricians, and so I was like, was there like a secret meeting that I wasn't a part of? But you're all electricians. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll try and be an electrician of the body, and I try and tailor it towards. Actually, one of my friends gave me this really good example. We were on holidays in some cabin in Austria. One of the lights were flickering, and he turns to me and he goes, that has an unstable connection, and because of the unstable connection to the power source, the application, the appliance is going to break down over time. It's like, bloody hell, it's like, well, thank you for that analogy. I'm going to use that from now on. And that's kind of how I communicate it to my friends, that there's like a faulty connection, and over time, that inconsistent power connection causes the muscle to break down. And there's nothing wrong with the appliance. Like, the muscle is fine, but the connection is damaged. And so that's how I kind of tailor it to all of my electrician friends, and something similar to other people. But it does give you a good understanding. Like, you're always thinking about what's happening, how can I communicate that in the simplest way.
Yeah, I think that's completely right. And I think storytelling also for a scientist in their capacity is incredibly important. And I want to add to what Rob has said and expand a little bit in a different direction. So my lab is in the neurology department. Even though I don't see patients myself, I often go along with the clinicians to observe the patient, collect tissues or one thing or another. And I can tell you, even though I am a CMT patient myself, many times when I see a patient in the clinic, I run back to the lab full of new energy and urgency and say, I've seen this patient, I've seen this person, and it is so much more motivating to be able to see and somehow read the body language and understand that person's journey and state of emotion. It's so important to have that as a source of motivation, even for a scientist. And then I want to turn that on its head. I think storytelling is also extremely important from the side of understanding the disease from a clinician's or a scientist's perspective. Because most of the time we see the patient once or twice in clinic, and then we try our best to get a full clinical picture and so on and so forth. But as you all know, there's an infinite amount of little things and experiences in our daily life that you can't really compress into the hour or 20 minutes or whatever you have when you talk to the clinician. And then you go home and you're like, oh, I should have mentioned this thing and there's this other thing. And if you would write it down, even that's challenging. So the more we can tell our stories, the more we can sort of communicate what the disease actually feels like and affects our life in our daily life, the better it is. And that has a concrete sort of scientific importance to it, because that maybe relates to the clinical trial stuff that we'll talk a little bit later. I think yesterday you talked about this. Obviously, when we have a medicine that we want to test, we also need to know if it works. And one way to test, to find out how it works, is by asking the patients and understanding really well what the disease actually is. So we can tell that it's getting better this way or better that way. So talking about the disease and how it is and what are the little things and how it affects your daily life is crucial, I think, from virtually every standpoint. So I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. Stephanie?
Being able to share our stories with the researchers. Maybe David and Brett can speak on this also, but let them know why they're doing what they're doing, who they're working, big impact it's going to have on our lives. And they need to know what symptoms are the most important to us to address, especially for rare types like mine, where breathing, vocal cords are affected. Car disorder can be very severe and life-threatening. They need to know that. And, and it's like it's crucial to be able to communicate directly with them. And it's been so wonderful to connect with the 2C researchers.
It's a symbiotic thing. You get out of it and then they get something out of it. Any other researchers in the room want to add to the value of hearing from a patient? Bruce?
Very motivating. That's why.
Excellent. Thank you, Bruce. All right, before I ask another question, does anybody have a question for the panel? If you want to just raise your hand. Don't be shy. Alex, hang on, we'll get you a mic. Hold on.
Hello everyone, Alexandre Yo, CMT France. Question to Rob and everyone. You said you were hiding your CMT at the beginning because you were able to do that. And I would say I did same when I was able to hide it because I thought it was like a weakness, you know. I was a CEO of a company, and for me, it was a weakness I wanted to hide. Until I realized, because I didn't have the choice to assume it and not to show it, but not to hide it, you know, just it. And I realized that it was a strength in the eyes of the other people. So we need to understand that it's not a weakness, it's a strength. Just explain your symptoms, what's happening to you, and you feel the weight on your shoulder. You can put it at the bin, you know, and you can open discussions, be more comfortable, and don't waste so much energy on unuseful things. Just it. I wanted to share this with you. And so for you, what happened when you stopped to hide it?
I'll comment there real quick. Thanks for the question, Alexander. Yes, it's just naturally you're gonna hide it until you're like, okay, I can't. But what you realize is that like everyone is going through something a bit like, and what you call emotional anxiety, they will have emotional anxiety about something else. Then all of a sudden, you have friends opening up to you about something that's causing them extreme anxiety, and so it does help build better connections with people. People open up to you and they're like, yeah, I can feel what you're going through. And then they share what they're going through. So it's like sharing stories. As sooner as you can embrace it, the less of a control it has on your life. And you will know the more you hide it, the more of a control it has on your life. And that's where the real pain is, actually, in the hiding and in the inability to accept who you are. So I think you hit a strong point. The more you're able to accept you are, the stronger your strides will be. Not really for a CMT patient, but the stronger your strides will be in life, metaphorically, not physically.
Soon enough, physically.
Soon enough. There's enough in the therapeutic pipeline for that.
Yeah, so I think that theme of turning the diagnosis, the disease, your journey into a strength, into a asset that you can use. I think Rob and I share that in some very concrete way because we've also structured our professional careers in this very, direct way around feeling empowered or taking charge of this disease. I think it can be incredibly empowering. I think you have absolutely right. And yet, I think it's important to not diminish that fear, that hurdle of saying for the first time to a friend, or maybe even worse, to a romantic partner, I have this thing. It's a disease. It's it may even be heritable. That's not a small thing. And I think every personal journey towards that point, whether it's eventually inevitable to sort of talk about it or whether you are more proactive about it, it's very personal. It's very unique to anybody. I can maybe share a little bit about mine. I had my father as an example. So my father had the disease. It's not subtle. It's very obvious something was going on. And still, it was not clear for us kids whether we had inherited it or not for a long time. And so there wasn't really for me a clear point of diagnosis, before you didn't have it and then afterwards you have CMT. More sort of a gradual thing, maybe annotated by one or two events. I remember at one point I went on a walk with my dad and we talked about CMT and the fact that at this point now it was clear that I had inherited it too, and that story was signified by him breaking down and crying. That's a memory that will stay with me, right? That signified it. But then there are these other experiences that are the total opposite in terms of positivity. I ended up talking to my friends in New York about having CMT, and you know what that turned into? That turned into a triathlon run with my friends. My name was Wolfgang, so it was Team Wolfpack. And we ran a New York City triathlon together, and we raised money for MDA, and it was incredible. And I wasn't last in the triathlon, which is the big thing. So yes, I think, what you said about taking charge and finding a way to use CMT as an asset, almost as a strength. It's a journey that we're all going through, but it's a worthwhile one. And there's a lot of power to be found in it, I think.
Go ahead, Paul.
I also did want to add, for myself, it has really grown my gratitude. I recognize the challenges I have, and I look around and I see others with abilities, and you can't help but sometimes kind of say to yourself, wow, wish I could do some of those things. But to your point, what we do recognize is we are all with battles, some visible, some not so visible. And I have used this as a way to, first of all, show, especially in communication, that it's okay to be visible and to be seen. There's so many people who I would say to myself, why would you ever have any problem standing up in front of someone? But who am I to judge, why people have their own personal challenges? But, again, use it as a catalyst, as an opportunity to show strength, but also to recognize the gratitude I have for the abilities I do have.
I'll add another piece too, and similar to Rob, until I couldn't hide it anymore was when I was like, well, I have to say something. There is one positive thing, as much as this is horrible, of course. My kids, they saw me. This just happened maybe a couple years ago. My kids are 9 and 5. They don't have CMT. And according to the doctor, well, I don't have it in my past generation that I know of. And according to my gene, I don't know if it's going to pass on to my kids, which thank God. But when I found out the news from the doctor, I can promise you I broke down in tears. More fear of, am I going to be able to walk? Am I going to trip and fall and all those things? But the positive things that I'll take out of this is, number one, as much as we go through our struggles, making sure, and thanks to my wife too, making sure that I show to my kids that even though we have our struggles, now he starts seeing that I put on braces every day, everything takes longer, all those different things. Like, listen, if I can deal with it, you better deal with life, whatever comes your way. And so being positive from that perspective is very important to me. And there was one more thing, but I can't remember. But that's probably my biggest motivation is and the second piece is, this disease now has forced me to start working out and taking care of my body more. I think I've lost 15 pounds in the last 2, 3 months just because if I want to be strong, and you know, if I want to live till I'm 80, 90, or 100, you got to be as fit as possible having a condition like this, because I will fall. And the more I can take care of myself, I think the better I will be.
Awesome. Thank you. And this is my final question, so I want everyone to answer if you're comfortable. We've talked a lot about sharing our story with our colleagues and our family and all of that. What would you say if you could go back to yourself at the most vulnerable point in time, now that you're further ahead? What advice would you give yourself? Younger you.
In 10, 20 seconds is speak up, get in front of other people, reach out. I mean, I reached out to you 6, 7 months ago
Through LinkedIn.
because through LinkedIn, I basically put in CMT and didn't even know there was a foundation. And I'm at soccer practice and I texted Laura, and thank goodness you texted. So I wish I did that earlier. So this is so helpful to be in a community of people that share similarities, commonalities.
Thanks. Go ahead.
That's it. That's it. Give it to just one person. You can make an impact.
Mhm.
Still be afraid to start your story. Finding others to share your life experiences.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else?
I would say to my younger self, remember a diagnosis of a rare disease is not a life destined to be a victim. You don't have to be a victim if you own your disease. You should focus on owning your disease and not letting your disease own you, and share your story.
Well said. I semi-lied because that wasn't the last question. We have one from the audience in the back.
This is just my own personal story, but I think that everybody's touched on this, and it's so important to share with your family what you're going through and what you have and how this is going to affect your life. I was diagnosed with it when I was 7, and my parents, for whatever reason, chose not to tell me that I had this. So I didn't find out I had this until I was 17. We were changing high schools, and it was written on my transcripts, Linda has Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, and she's not aware of this. So during the time from the time I was 7 till I was 17, I was bullied and teased, and I didn't know why. And, somebody was talking about not being picked for teams. Well, I wasn't just not picked. Everybody was picked. And then they walked away, and I was like, hello, I'm still here. Is anybody going to pick me? And I wasn't picked. And I had to run in a 500-yard dash, and I came in second to last. Pardon me. And the person who was last was in a full body cast. So I don't blame my parents. I think they had the reasons for not telling me. Not much was known about it at the time, and they were extremely proud people. And I don't know why, but I did find out that I had it from the transcripts. And I went to my friend's mother and said, I have this tooth disease. And she said, you don't have a tooth disease. So I finally went to my mother to ask her, and she sat down and told me, but my dad would never talk about it and would never confront it and would never acknowledge it. So, I think that's kind of sad.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Can the entire room please join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their story? It's not easy, and we're grateful for all of you. So thank you. Okay, so what's up next is we're going to enjoy a plated lunch. So many patients in the room, we thought we would bring lunch to you. So if you need to use the restroom or anything, please feel free. But lunch is going to come in and be served as soon as the doors open up. We are also going to try, if possible, since we're sitting to eat, if you haven't met anybody yet, or you're a researcher, or you're a patient, you see somebody, like, mix up, and this is what this whole point is to mix up. And the CMTRF staff are going to try to spread out around the tables too. So if you see us join in, we just want to get to know you, make sure we're answering all the questions that you have. When dessert gets served, our Vice President of Research and Drug Development, Meg Drummond, is going to come up and give a recap of the Research Day presentations and what we learned over the last day and a half. So we're going to pick up the program then. But before we move on, I just want to thank all of our sponsors for allowing us to make this happen. And I hope you enjoy your lunch and build new connections. Thank you. Thank you.